All right, you're listening to the Table 12 podcast. Danny Barr, Paul Marino, Rob Klein on the board. Gentlemen.
Hello, fellas.
Hello.
So you mentioned to me this weekend to check out a documentary on Netflix on the Wrecking Crew.
Right.
Called The Wrecking Crew.
Right.
And for people that don't know, the Wrecking Crew was a group of session musicians at Capitol Records. And they've played basically on every song you ever listened to that was recorded in the late 50s, 60s, and early 70s.
Yep.
Thousands of songs. So what'd you think of the doc?
I thought it was great. You know, there was a lot of, you know, when you look at the artists that they started out playing for, you know, like even going back to Sinatra and Dean Martin, you know, the Beach Boys, I think, was the most prominent one. Because
Pet Sounds, that was when Brian wrote the Pet Sounds album and sent the Beach Boys out on tour.
Yep.
And he stayed back.
And they toured 150 dates that year.
And Brian spent all his time working with the Wrecking Crew to record Pet Sounds.
Mm-hmm.
Brian had stage fright anyway, so he didn't want to tour.
Right.
But this documentary, phenomenal documentary, I highly recommend it. But it was done by the guitarist's son. So the guitarist was Tommy Tedesco. And
his son, Denny.
His son, Denny, made this documentary to honor his father, but also to honor these group of people whose names were never included in the credits on an album.
And a lot of it by design. They didn't want to be on there because they were trying to keep an image of the bands that they were actually playing for that didn't even play the music. And they did even like the associations, and you know, they played the Monkees music, you know.
The Monkees, everybody knew, was a TV show.
The Partridge Family too. And
the Partridge Family, but not the association.
No, there was a lot of bands that they actually were playing on.
And so there was kind of like they met in the middle of the road. Producers wanted to keep their names off it because they wanted to promote the bands because they were going to go out and tour.
Right.
And the Wrecking Crew, the studio musicians, were comfortable with that just being their job. And it was a paycheck to them. And all they wanted was to get paid to go in for the day. They went home every night to their families.
Yeah, but their hours were like long.
And back and forth.
Yeah.
But they didn't tour.
No.
They weren't gone for 6 weeks. You know, they were home every day. And they kind of like they were all about the music.
Right.
But
they were having trouble, like some of the bands, they would marvel at the songs that they were doing. Like they couldn't produce it. Like one of the guitarists for one of the bands said, "I can't do what he's doing." Like, so they had to go back on tour. Whoever the band was, that they was trying to sell them out on tour, but they couldn't reproduce it as well as
they had
the
to simplify the songs.
They had to simplify the song because
right.
Those guys were so great that
So you had Tommy Tedesco on guitar.
Yeah.
Hal Blaine on drums. Hal Blaine, to me, he's right up there with Buddy Rich and Ed Shaughnessy and that crew of that Gene Krupa, that drummers. Class of drummers. I just think Hal Blaine could be the coolest guy I've ever seen. Like no matter what room he was in, he was cool.
Yeah.
So you had Carol Kay on bass. Carol Kay, who Brian Wilson said is the greatest bass player in the world.
Yep, you said that.
You had Al Casey on guitar, and Al Casey was the one when one of the bands was when Glenn Campbell was part of the Wrecking Crew.
He started out with them, yeah.
Right. And when he was recording an album, he was trying to tell his guitarist to be like Al Casey. And Al Casey's saying, I'm home.
Yeah. Because he wanted to have his own band. I understand it, but I wasn't busy.
Earl Palmer.
Yeah.
Another great drummer. Plaz Johnson.
Leon Russell was there.
Leon Russell, who a lot of people don't realize started out as a session musician. And him, like Glenn Campbell, found a way to break out as a solo artist.
Mm-hmm.
But he was part of the Wrecking Crew. And
a lot of the bands that they played, Herb Alpert,
Well,
Mamas and the Papas were their band. I mean,
Herb
Mamas and-
Alpert was a massive producer.
phenomenal.
A&R Records. He formed A&R Records.
But some of that music was just great. I always loved listening to Herb Alpert. My father played it when I was a kid. You know.
Still alive, 91, still
Yeah.
performing.
Yeah. Sonny and Cher. You know, the Byrds, the Ronettes, Crystals. They worked with Sam Cooke a little bit.
So you mentioned the Byrds.
Mhm.
I found that part interesting because Roger McGuinn,
Went to play in there. He was allowed
he
in
was
there.
a session
Yeah.
player to start before the Byrds and before all that. And so when they were going to go in and do Tambourine Man, the Wrecking Crew was playing on that.
And the other guys didn't like it. David
Right.
Crosby.
and Chris Hillman but Roger McGuinn could sit in. So they were a bit butthurt on that.
Yeah.
But no one in the Wrecking Crew was playing a 12-string Rickenbacker either.
Right.
But they would knock out 3 songs in 3 hours. And Roger McGuinn said, when we went in to do Turn, Turn, Turn as ourselves, took 3 weeks.
78 takes or something. He said, yeah.
Right. So I found that part interesting, that story.
But that just shows you, even though, because I consider those guys good musicians, the Byrds and everything, but they were so much more in tune to how to create songs in the studio. And then when these guys came in with their songs, like, I remember Lou Adler saying even about the Mamas and the Papas, John Phillips knew the song. He wrote a couple of songs that they brought to him first, California Dreaming and all.
Well, not to cut you off, but I was surprised because Barry McGuire is the one that brought that song.
Mm-hmm.
So they all lived together. And that's the Laurel Canyon days.
Right.
But Barry, another documentary, Echo in the Canyon.
Which is great. We've done that one before.
Yep. But Barry McGuire brought Lou Adler California Dreamin'. I never knew that. And
Well, in Echo in the Canyon, when Lou Adler was explaining, they were there. And
yeah, but he wasn't. They didn't bring that up. Like I never knew Barry McGuire was the first one to want to do that song.
Oh, okay.
I knew John Phillips wrote it.
Right.
He wrote it for Michelle because she was home when they were in Texas. She was or the islands.
No, she was in New York. She wanted to go to California.
She was homesick.
Yeah.
And but I learned that from the documentary that Barry McGuire, who did
Right.
Eva Destruction.
But like Lou Adler knew, like he had the singers because the 4 singers were great. Mamas and the Papas. So
Right.
They knew that they were going to use their vocals, and I think John might have played a little guitar, but they used the Wrecking Crew for the main guts of the songs. So it worked that way, you know. But at the end, well, I don't want to jump to the end yet.
Well,
but-
I mean, but you look at the line of producers that used them. You know, not just Lou Adler,
Spector.
but Phil Spector.
Yep.
You know,
the Ronettes, Spector.
Brian Wilson was his own producer,
Mm-hmm.
and the way they talk about Brian Wilson.
Yeah.
I heard someone say Brian Wilson's the closest thing we would ever know what it was like to be around when Bach and Beethoven were
Yeah.
alive, and that kind of hit me a bit because I don't think we even, as casual fans, scratched the surface of his genius.
Right. I think he's,
I mean, we know he's a genius.
We know it, but when you hear his peers talk about it,
And the way they dissect what he did.
mm-hmm.
And if you watch the Beach Boys documentary, there's a big part of it about making Pet Sounds. And they show Brian Wilson was 24 years old.
he's going to each one, telling them the part, right?
Right.
And he would go back to the beginning and make sure they knew it, and he would just keep going around.
And not all of them read music,
No.
which is Glenn Campbell didn't read music. They would listen and hear what you want done, and then they would.
And Good Vibrations, I think he used 3 different studios for that song because he liked the way
The acoustics.
music was done in one studio, then the harmonies were done in another studio, and he put it together out of 3 studios.
Yeah, Gold Star. Gold Star was one of the studios. Capitol was
Sun,
One-
I think they called Sun. Was it called Sun? out
No,
there?
Sun is
Sun was in
Memphis.
Memphis, but there was a Sun studio. I thought he was in the documentary.
But,
out there too.
but
No, it was phenomenal. And then a lot of the TV theme songs they wrote, like Bonanza and Batman, Green Acres, The Munsters, Mission Impossible,
and Mission Carol Kennedy.
Petticoat Junction.
And it's funny. We hear a song, we play a song, we listen to a song. We don't dissect a song. and then you hear Carol Kay say, "Yeah, they were trying to come up with a lead in, so I just played these few notes," and they're like, "Yes, that's exactly what we need."
Yeah.
And then when you hear it, you think to yourself, "Okay, now I've heard that every day of my life."
Yeah.
That lead in. And she was just brilliant, and she was as hardcore as any of them.
No, she was one of the guys. I mean, she was tough, and she wasn't intimidated by playing with all those guys, and they all got along.
Because she knew how good she was.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd recommend it to anybody who wants it. It's on Netflix. It's a great show.
So Elvis is another one that recorded with the Wrecking Crew, and he recorded Memories, and they showed it in the documentary. And so I looked it up because I was curious about who wrote that song, because for some reason in my head I thought Paul Anka wrote it, but he didn't. Mac Davis wrote it.
Mac Davis.
And Elvis was already in the studio, and he wanted one more song, and he wanted a song that was reflective. So he called Mac Davis and said, "I need a song, but I need it by the morning." And Mac Davis wrote Memories in 30 minutes.
Jeez.
He says him and his songwriting partner, he says he just went over to his house, locked themselves in a room, and just wrote a song, sent it over to Elvis, said, "Here you go." And then he
brought it over to them.
He brought it to the crew, and the crew looked at it and said, "Okay, we can do this." And they recorded. Like, it's one of my favorite Elvis songs.
Mm-hmm.
And but it's just these songwriters that can do that, can just knock out a song, is amazing to me. But the sad part of the documentary was when Hal Blaine was driving in his car,
and
talking
about the divorce.
He lost everything.
Yeah.
He ended up a security guard
in
Arizona. But then the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame finally recognized the individuals in the Wrecking Crew and wanted to induct them. And Carol Kay declined. She declined because she didn't feel she needed the recognition, number one. To her, they were doing a job.
Right.
She also never liked the name Wrecking Crew. And they don't really address it in the documentary.
Yeah, how'd they get the name?
So they addressed that. I
don't remember them saying how they got the name.
So there was part of the doc where they had three older guys that were replaced by the Wrecking Crew at Gold Star Records. And they were sitting around the table in these gold satin jackets talking. And one guy credited Hal Blaine with coming up the name. And the other guy goes, "Well, that's a name that got tossed around among studio musicians for a long time." But Hal Blaine is credited with giving them the name, the Wrecking Crew, because I guess they feel they just wrecked before them, studio musicians wore suits to work. And they sat in there with a jacket and tie and were very serious and never smoked and never swore and never goofed around or nothing. It was just a job, serious job. You took it seriously. And then Blaine and Tedesco. Tedesco's a funny guy. Like when they were showing him
he was doing the
seminars,
I
could sit in a room and listen to him for a day, talk about his career and his life. Very funny guy. Went on the Gong Show.
He was funny. Yeah, I saw that.
And won the Gong Show.
Yeah.
But and at the end they show Hal Blaine
walking towards the hall.
Yeah, I forget who he was walking with.
Well, Palmer was the other one that got in.
But Earl Palmer got in, and he thanked Hal Blaine for that. Because Earl Palmer was a jazz drummer.
Yeah, he says...
He didn't even like rock and roll.
No, but he says, "I made my money in rock and roll, and how could you not like it?" He goes,
"That's where the money was."
I was a jazz drummer, but I wasn't making any money.
Right.
I thought there was a couple of interesting things I also thought about. Well, one of them was said during the end of the show there, is that it ended because the musicians coming up, they wanted to play their own music.
Yep.
So they started to learn, you know what, we wanted... Now, they wanted to learn their own music and play it out. They wanted the sound to come from them, and it started in England more than anything. Now, the English Wrecking Crew, okay, was John Paul Jones and Jimmy Page was part of that. No publicity on it, but that's how they started. The difference is that a lot of the bands that were established, like the Kinks and the Stones and all them, they wouldn't use. They would have their musicians. They would have the guys in their band, but they would always add somebody, in the studio. They might add a piece or add something. Just like the Beatles, they did a lot of stuff with George Martin where they brought in symphony guys, guys
Right.
playing all of that. But it kind of went away from that type of studio musician, solely relying on them as we moved into the late 70s. They wanted to play their own music. They didn't want to do that. So the bands got more intricate, and they got,
Well, they got more talented.
got more talented. Now,
Because if you think in the late 50s, early 60s, these groups were put together, like the Backstreet Boys. They were just, where when you got to the Beatles changed everything, but when you got to the 70s, late 60s into the 70s, these were people that played together. They met in high school. They were talented in their own right. And Keith Richards wasn't going to let anyone else play his guitar licks.
no.
The only difference I would say to what you're saying is Clapton and Jeff Beck, because they didn't always have bands.
Right. Well, what I was going to say, we're kind of going back and forth with it, but same thing with John Lennon. When he left the Beatles, he didn't want to have another set for musicians. So depending on one album, the first album that he did solo, we had Klaus Vormann, Ringo Starr, and himself, basically.
Right.
He just wanted to keep it simple. He wanted to do the piano parts and do all that. And Ringo said I was basically a timekeeper. And I mean, that's a great album. But then, for Imagine, he brought in Alan White and Jim Keltner, once in a while, and George came and played. So he didn't want to have a set band, but I wouldn't call it a session group, but he wanted to play with a lot of different people.
And Keltner got to start with the Wrecking Crew. Keltner was
one of the guys,
one of them. He wasn't in the doc, but he's on the list.
But Keltner played with all those. He was a session
Keltner played with everybody.
He played with everybody.
Everybody.
And in the Wilburys, he was the drummer.
Yes.
But I guess
he even had a Wilbury name. And I don't remember what it was.
Yeah.
But he did. George insisted that he have a Wilbury name.
But Alan White, he played on Love Me Do a couple times. I mean, there was a couple of different versions with Ringo, him, and actually Pete Best. There was 3 different drummers on different 3 recordings of that. One of them was released. Alan White was on it in the beginning because Ringo couldn't make it. But Alan White became the drummer of Yes. You know that?
Yes.
So
No pun
intended. So I think they started to get away from that. But after coming out of the Beatles, for example, John Lennon didn't want to have a set for. He wasn't going to form like McCartney formed Wings, okay, and a couple guys from the Moody Blues, Denny Lane and Jimmy McCullough were in that. He wanted to use different people, and he used all different people for different albums. But essentially, what they were saying at the end of the Wrecking Crew, Blaine and the others, we knew it was going to run its course, and these musicians wanted to learn their own music. They didn't want anybody playing it. The exception being, like I just mentioned, sometimes they'd bring a guy in, sometimes they'd bring one person in, but it wasn't like the Beach Boys or, because even the Beach Boys didn't like it. They were fighting. He said, we were fighting all the time. I said,
Not at first.
No.
Mike Love didn't like it.
Mike Love didn't like anything.
He hated everything Brian did.
Yeah.
He was jealous.
Yeah, he was.
But they got it once they heard it.
Yeah.
They knew they couldn't do that.
No.
And the Beatles kind of fell into that same trap that they started doing things in the studio that made them stop touring.
Right.
Because we can't reproduce this sound on stage.
Right. They said, we can't, Ringo used to say, how are we going to do Sgt. Pepper out? We can't do that out. But now McCartney can do it because the technology's different. You couldn't play that stuff in a band.
Well, yeah, we're talking 40, 50 years ago. That I did find one thing in the doc interesting was Peter Tork.
Yeah.
Peter Tork was against the Wrecking Crew. He was against everything. He felt he should be playing all his songs, all the songs, him and Mike Nesmith both. And something Mickey Dolenz said that I found interesting in it was he's an actor playing a musician.
Actor playing musician.
Peter Tork and Mike Nesmith were musicians
playing actors.
having to act. Okay. So
excuse me.
But Peter Tork even admitted, though, years later, yeah, I would have done it the same way because we couldn't have done that. We couldn't have reproduced that. They did eventually. I think the headquarters. I think it might have been headquarters where they played their own instruments, but it's their weakest. It was their weakest album.
And they went out on tour, but it was like the Beatles. They were screaming.
It didn't matter.
They didn't know how bad they were. But because then Mickey Dolenz he sang on the records, but he started taking drum lessons just so
from Hal Blaine.
Yeah, is that unbelievable?
And I wanted to bring this up to you. You're a drummer. I played a little drums growing up. We all learned with. I know you know the name of the grip, but I call it traditional grip.
Conventional, yeah.
Right. But which is holding in your left hand, holding a stick between your second and third finger in the middle.
Right.
Hal Blaine did not. Hal Blaine held it between his first and second finger.
Did he? I didn't know.
And they showed a clip of
him going around
the Monkees
the set too.
Well, they showed a clip of the Monkees, and Dolenz is holding his stick
grip
that way, the same as Hal Blaine, and which I found interesting. But then when Dolenz starts talking about how Hal Blaine was actually teaching him, which goes to show you,
he says Monday morning he's starting drum lessons. He told Mickey Dolenz.
It goes to show you there's no ego.
No, them guys had no ego.
You're doing a TV show. I'm going to help you not make an ass of yourself in the show. And the first 3 albums of the Monkees, those songs are phenomenal. Unbelievable. The songwriters, Neil Diamond, Carole King, Boyce and Hart. I mean, tremendous. So I was happy to hear Peter Tork come to the realization that they couldn't have done what that was. But it absolutely made them miserable. Him and Nesmith, miserable. They had #1 records, and he's like, but it's not our record.
Right.
And it was funny where like they would actually say to the groups, no, there's no need for you to come to the studio.
Yeah.
We just need him.
Yeah.
Because he's the
Mickey's
vocal.
going to sing it. That's it.
Mickey or Davey, we just need them. Or Mike. Mike sang quite a few songs. But whoever's singing can come to the studio. The rest of you guys can take the day off.
Yeah. He said, well, you told me to come here. He goes, well, I don't want you to just hang out. If you want to hang out, we don't need you. Put your guitar down. You're not coming up here.
And then they said most of the groups came to grips with it and actually enjoyed watching them work because the way they managed a studio. And kind of in line with what you were talking about with the English musicians, the first time Clapton worked with Tom Dowd, who worked with the Swampers and that session group, Clapton was furious. And then he heard what Tom Dowd did and said, I never want to make a record without you. And it just shows you the engineers, how important the engineers and the producers, the people that we don't even know their names.
Yeah.
And there was, quite a few. Stax had their session musicians, and like I said, the Swampers that played on Skinner and played on Allman Brothers and played Layla.
Right. Well, that's the first song that I think there was no piano in that. The piano
Correct.
part, and then he went home and he worked it out. Tom Dowd, right?
Tom Dowd.
And then he sent it to Clapton. He goes, I don't want that on there. And then he listened to it, how it bridged the song in the middle,
right?
And then he loved it.
But when they first went in to do it, Dowd was telling them where to stand, and Clapton's like, "You're not telling me where to stand. No one tells me where to stand."
Yeah.
And then Dowd introduced him to Duane Allman, and convinced him to bring Duane into the studio, and just changed rock history right then and there. So just the studio. The guys in the studio, they don't get the credit they always deserve,
It's a lost time. You're never going to see it again because there's nothing like that now.
No, I mean, I'm sure, well, for jingles and commercials and television and we've got a guy from Hamburg, Brendan Fitzpatrick, who plays wonderful blues guitars, great albums and everything, but he's made a living doing television music and movie, soundtrack, working on that as a guitarist. So, I mean, you can make a living. And Tedesco.
Well, no, I meant even just like bands, like with the bands. There's no bands like what we had back in the day.
Well, I guess it depends if they bring orchestration into it.
Yeah,
that's when you'll see it.
But anyway, Are they the only two in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
Well, Carol Kay declined. I'm Earl Palmer's in. Blaine is in. I think. What did I say? Blaine. I'd have to look to see if Tedesco and Al Casey are in. They might be. But the inductees, the 26th inductees came out today,
I'm going to love to hear this list.
and I think you're going to be a little disappointed, Paul.
I know I will be.
They, they break out performer and influencer. It's something new because that's how Warren Zevon got in last year, was influencer, which I disagree with. He should have been a performer. But so I'm going to give you the 3 rock inductees. Phil Collins as a solo.
Right.
Billy Idol.
Billy Idol.
Iron Maiden.
Iron Maiden.
Okay, I have no problem with all 3 of those.
I don't really have a problem with it, no.
And under influencer, Graham Parsons, which I'm absolutely through the roof on Graham Parsons. I love him.
No argument there.
But then we move from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame into what I like to call the Pop and R&B Hall of Fame. Now, I might get some pushback on this. I don't know. I never listened to this group. I kind of think of them as poppy, but maybe they're not. Oasis.
Yeah, they shouldn't be in.
The only thing I know about Oasis is a sketch SNL did with Will Ferrell, which is hysterical. Sade. Luther
Is that
Vandross.
a cologne?
Sade. I actually like her. I don't think she should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but I do like her music. Luther Vandross.
I like Luther Vandross, but
he's not Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. None of these people are bad.
Who's Wu-Tang Wang?
Wu-Tang Clan. They've been around for a long time.
Come on.
Queen Latifah.
Come on.
MC Light. Never even heard of it. But,
Ultra Light?
But
isn't that
and I'm not downgrading their talent.
It's just not rock and roll.
But it's not. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has run out of people.
Well, no, they haven't, because they haven't put anybody in.
They haven't put Styx in yet.
They haven't put Styx, Boston, Motley Crue. I mean, the B-52s. I can go on and on.
The Black Crowes were nominated.
They didn't make it.
But they didn't make it.
How did they not make it? And these other bands, these other people get in.
Joy Division. I personally had never heard of Joy Division.
I've heard a couple songs of theirs. I mean, I don't know.
I looked them up. Techno punk is what they're called. Yeah. They're not punk, but they were inspired by the Sex Pistols, but they introduced electronics into it. And I don't know. I can't say one way or the other because I never listened to them. But it's just not the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame anymore.
Well, everything's got to be a certain message now. How come Led Zeppelin ain't in the Hip Hop Hall of Fame?
Because I don't think there is one.
Well, I don't care what you call it.
I don't think
I'm actually Gene Simmons said that, so I don't know.
All I know is that this is going to be a 3.5 hour show.
I'm not watching it.
Well, I'm going to watch.
No, I give up.
I fast forward, Paul. You have that ability to fast forward.
I do. I choose not to use it on this.
And what I was going to say is it'll be a 3.5 hour show that I can watch in about 40 minutes. But I am going to watch. I'm going to watch the Graham Parsons segment, and I'm going to watch Billy Idol. I never listened to Iron Maiden, and Phil Collins, a little bit.
Look, I could see putting him in, but there's a lot of bands that haven't gone in yet. That's ridiculous. How about the Guess Who and Bachman Turner Overdrive? How about them? Come on.
Well, they would have to go in together. Then you'd be putting Randy Bachman in twice.
There's two separate bands.
You put Randy Bachman in twice.
Well, they could put one in or the other in. I don't care, but do something. The B-52s were good. I mean, I don't know.
No, I think they're just trying to appeal to a larger audience. That's all. I don't agree with it. Well, you can shake your head at me. I'm not disagreeing.
I'm not shaking my head at you. I'm shaking my head at them.
Well, they're not here to see it. I am.
Oh, so what? That's your misfortune.
I got to look across the table.
That's your misfortune.
Oh, you better believe it.
It's very disappointing, but I get disappointed a lot now as things go forward because I don't like any of the Hall of Fames,
especially since we started doing this.
No, not at all. Not at all.
I was making a joke. You didn't have to take me
Well, your
seriously.
jokes, they never land. I don't know.
But they're not for you.
They don't have any landing gear.
In your opinion.
They're not for you. They're not for who are they for? The audience? The guy in Vietnam's going to get it.
I hope so.
Anyway, yeah, I think I'm going to skip this one. I don't even think I'm going to use a DVR tape on it or digital, whatever you use on it.
A video cassette recorder. And lastly, before we sign off, Rob is developing our own Facebook page. Thank you, Rob.
You're welcome.
And we'll launch that and tag people and try to get that out there. And I would really love it if the listeners would sign on, friend it, and comment and let us know how we're doing.
Yeah, we'll put pictures up there from episodes,
And
stuff
we're
like
going to
that.
give you a report on the next trip Rob takes that he don't remember. We'll try to come up with something next week.
I'll probably go somewhere this weekend and not
Where
remember.
you going?
Up to the lake.
Okay, well, I think you'll remember
Well, that's
that.
not a trip.
It is a trip.
No, it's not.
What is it?
You're going to your lake house.
Yes,
It's not a trip.
kind
It's
of
a
a
trip
trip.
for me.
Do you need clear to get to the lake house?
No, I don't.
And it's not a trip.
It's a trip for Paul.
I'm going to Syracuse
The
for
only-
one night, I
the,
think.
The only thing I give you is you have to pay a toll.
No,
Right.
you don't. I go through Port Jervis. No toll.
Oh, no toll. So, yeah, it's not a trip.
Oh, okay.
All right, well, you could tell us about it next week.
I guess
If I remember, I'll try and do that.
that's Paul's way of saying he doesn't want to talk about this anymore.
I know. He's done. He's bored.
No, not at all. I'm just trying to keep it real here. You
Yeah,
know,
that's what you're known for.
Yeah.
Keeping it real.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you.
All right, I guess we're done.
I
Bye.
guess so.
Paul says we're done.